G'day guys, how's it going? So, okay, just a second. Trying to transport a SCOBY to a friend at work. Silly little thing. Anyway, Brexit. There's a lot of people that say that they want another referendum and that they're definitely sure that, if they do have one, that everyone will vote to remain. And that'll be it. And then when asked, well, if you have another referendum and everyone again still votes to leave, even if it's by a very small margin, would you accept that decision or not? And they didn't really have an answer, or they just kept saying, oh no, I'm sure it'll be rigged if it's a leave vote and all that sort of other stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I then went and had a look at the return rate of the elections, because in the UK, voting is optional. It's not compulsory like it is in Australia. So it was very interesting to look at the return rates, or the amount of people, or the percentage of people that voted. So on an average election, the return rate is about 35-ish% of people that are eligible to vote or registered to vote will actually vote. The return rate on the referendum was just over 72%. That's a lot of people that had their say. Now, I admit that there are a lot of people that say, okay, well, a lot of people that voted to leave now want to say they want to remain. But then, because they're saying, oh, but we were lied to, all sorts of other stuff. However, there's also a lot of people who voted to stay now want to leave. So given a high rate of return, and given that, the number of people that want to leave and remain have changed their minds, being equal, the decision, if they had another referendum, I'm not convinced that it will swing back the other way. So that would be interesting to look at the stats, and just looking at the stats, that 72% of people, that's pretty huge. And I think for the last 2016 election where Trump got in, just around 50%, I think, of people voted. Now, voting is also optional in the US. Now, what's really funny is that voting, there's a round of voting in the UK, and it was actually on, I think it was a Thursday, and I thought that was quite interesting, because voting optional, you have voting on a work day, whereas in Australia, voting is compulsory and you have it on a weekend to allow everyone to go in and vote. So that is quite interesting, in that the barriers to going to vote is that it's on a weekday rather than on a weekend, where people have time off if they need to go to a voting centre. How close those voting centres are, because obviously in a city with a high population, there's probably a lot more voting centres that are closer together, rather than out in the country areas where there might be quite a bit of a hike on a work day to go and actually vote. So that the people that actually go out and vote are much more determined to have their say. So what does that mean? I have no real idea what it means, other than that since it's optional, people are that determined to have their say are going to have their say, even if it's only 30% of the populations that can, take time off, go out there, all determined to, no matter what, have an influence in what's going on in their country. Having said that, there's a lot of people, the government make it easy in Australia to actually have your say. Voting is compulsory, yes, for those that are registered to vote. And I know that not everyone registers to vote, especially those eligible, which I think is a real shame. And to me, you have the option of having influence on a national level, granted, once every 3 years, or that depending on the level of government. But that is an option that you have to influence something really big, something bigger than you, something that you can contribute to and say, I did that. So you can make a mistake or vote for the other guy or whatever. At least you've had your say. At least you've had an opportunity to make an informed decision on the future of not only your country, but what's going on in the world, what could impact your descendants in the future going on. So, interesting facts and figures, guys. having a look at not just the emotive side of it, but the facts and figures of return rates on voting, primary votes in Australia, because we have preferential voting, things like the voting in the electoral college versus the popular vote in America, the different types of voting such as referendums, which are like our plebiscites here in Australia. I had various arguments with people about what referendums and plebiscites are and all sorts of other stuff and what applies. So, and the wording, specific wording, that was it Tony Abbott when he said that, you know, if we have a plebiscite, he will, I think it was he will apply the will of the people, rather than saying just, oh, I'm just going to have a vote and see what people think. He says no, if the vote comes in saying yes, they want same-sex marriage, he will apply that and make sure it goes into law, because it's more than about him, it's about, you know, the people he represents, which is as it should be, you know. Politicians, despite your personal preferences, need to do what the people want, because you've been elected to represent them. If you don't represent them, then you may as well step down. Also, you are in the public eye and you will get a lot of stuff thrown at you. It depends on how you deal with it. Okay, so thoughts. Interesting things about Brexit. You may or may not have known the return rate, 72% of people. That's pretty astonishing. The wording of the conditions of the referendum. That'd be interesting to look into. I haven't looked into that, I must admit, I haven't. But it would be interesting to see. Anything else? No. I don't think anything else. It is interesting the number of people that have changed their minds for and against, and the reasons why. For a lot of people it comes down to economics and money. For some it's much more than economics and money. It's about their determination as a nation, their identity as British, or their identity as being Irish or Scottish, or even, you know, just the whole idea of, you know, having, I think it was it Milton said that you could have, if they want to talk about economics, Milton said you can have a national health system or open borders, but you can't have both, because if you have both, one will destroy the other, which is quite interesting when you look at and go through all the economics of it, like full-on economics, not just economics the way you wish it to be, but the actual economics and the flow and the decisions that people make, plus also the ecology of it all, because for some reason they decided to talk about EU climate change. And anyone who's actually studied things like geology and ecology, open and closed systems and the effects. There's been a study where they released wolves back into the wild in America, and they found that by the wolves culling the herds, the natural herds that were running around, and the bison and all that in America, that it actually helped the environment, because it helped keep the population down of the animals, thereby, you know, preventing a lot more erosion around the river streams, and allowed it to recover and all sorts of other stuff. It took quite a while. It was an interesting study to watch and see and read about. Anyway, I've bragged on enough, talked enough about that, and maybe I'll have something a bit more BDSM-y tomorrow. I'll have to think about that. Anyway, love you guys. See ya.